I'm Kathy, and I'm going to do a book report on The Personal Librarian. Here it is, and it's written by Mary Benedict and Victoria Christopher Murray. They both are listed as authors. I'm not really sure how you write a book together, but it seemed to me like you could tell in the middle of the book that they switched authors. I thought it got a little slow, and then it picked back up. So I don't know how they do that. If somebody writes part of it, somebody writes the rest of it. But the story is fascinating. It's historical fiction, and it's about J.P. Morgan's personal librarian for his personal library. And she was in charge of cataloging and acquisitions and meeting with books dealers and auctions all over the world. She was born in 1883, and that wasn't that long after the Civil War. Her father was the grandson of slaves. Her mother was part of a prominent African-American family in Washington, D.C. And her mother decided that she wanted the family to pass as white, and apparently the color of their skin allowed for that. So that's what she reported on the U.S. Census, which precipitated the separation from their father because he was an equal rights proponent, and he was the first man to attend and graduate from Harvard, first African-American man. He was very active in civil rights, which was a good time period in the early 1900s, but then the country became more and more racist, and the mother decided that she wanted her family or kids to have the benefits and the opportunities that would not have been afforded to them had they not been white. So that's what she put down on the census. They moved to New York, they separated from the father, and that's what they did. She changed her name, the librarian. It was Belle Greener, and then she changed it to Belle Lacosta Green and claimed a grandmother from Portugal. So that would sort of account for the slightly darker skin. And she was able to accomplish far more than she would have because she wouldn't have had the opportunities. None of her sisters and brother wouldn't have had them either. So the mother made a difficult decision. Belle was born in 1883. She died in 1950. She was hired on by J.P. Morgan in 1905 and worked there until 1948, 2 years before she died. So her entire life was spent there. She never married. It would have been tricky because had she had a child, then who knows what genetics are going to do. So she may have had to explain why she had a very dark child. So she was never able to marry. She had possibly a couple of romances, but she had to be extremely careful because she was operating in high society, and she did that for her whole life. J.P. Morgan was very fond of her, and she did a really good job and managed to acquire a lot of things that otherwise probably would not have been a part of his collection. And when he died in 1913, his son took over and she stayed on, and she was able to convince the son to open up the library for public use in 1924. So it became a public library, which had been her goal. Also in 1913, when J.P. Morgan died, he left her the equivalent of over $1 million in his will. So that gave her a whole lot more freedom, but she continued to work for the library and to really turn it into a premier library in the world. It was one of the best in the world. So it was fascinating. It was a really good book. It was interesting. I think it was well researched, and they only, jumped off away from fact when they absolutely had to, and wanted to spice it up with some personal information that would have been impossible to get from the research. So, good book, Personal Librarian. Fun read.